Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I am Dylan Weaver.
And I am Andrew Acebo.
And we are here to talk about episode 372, For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, Part 1.
Oh boy, and they do be chiming them wedding bells.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
They'll toll later.
I think it's part 3. And then,
you would assume.
fingers crossed.
This is, we set some of this up last week, but this is an episode following a long hiatus for Odyssey. They released It's a Wrap December 7th of 1996 and did not produce another episode until this one, which came out September 6th of 97. So a full 9-month hiatus.
Wow.
During that hiatus, both Chuck Bolte and McCusker left focus on the family, but McCusker stays on as a freelancer, which is also like what Marshall Younger's doing at this point in the show, which is really interesting, where it's like, I have no idea what that looks like, but just he's no longer like staff member at Focus.
He's an adjunct?
Yeah, kind of. And then, Dave Arnold takes over as producer, and we start to get in some new freelance writers who then go on to write episodes that no one actually likes or cares about.
It is very interesting, the kind of changing of the guard that happens in this album. I never really was able to separate early Odyssey from middle Odyssey, with the exception of the introduction of Paul Herlinger.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like, upon re-listening to so many of the episodes from this era, and obviously covering so much of it for the show, I do see a little bit more of a clear transition in this album, especially. I feel like just more of a tonal shift. Like, this is where I feel like Odyssey starts to feel more like The Simpsons, to use my favorite analogy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're in our like post. It's not. This hiatus is not just because of like writing staff changing and whatnot. It's also that thing we've been talking about forever with what do we do with Wit?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they finally settled on, okay, we're gonna make Herlinger the guy, and then took some time off to figure out what that was going to actually mean and look like. It's at a point in the show where there's really only, like, you only have the major writers of Phil Lawler, Paul McCusker, Marshall Younger at this point.
Yeah.
Like, there are no other, like, regular writers until later. I guess with the exception of Dave Arnold, who is not serving as a writer at this point, but as a producer. But yeah, it's just, it's an interesting season of the show. And I'm excited to talk about this 3-parter.
Yeah, certainly.
We've got this 3-parter, and then we've got one more episode, and then we're done with this mega arc.
Wow.
I know.
That is...
Who knew it would end?
Yeah, I mean, not like I could have seen this coming by tracking it along the list or anything. No, but yeah, it's crazy to be getting to the end of the mega arc, and also, yeah, covering... Just, I mean, this is one of the most iconic episodes of Odyssey in my mind. Like, this is up there with, like, Snow Day and stuff like that, where it's like, when I think about Odyssey, I think about a handful of episodes, and I would say that this is definitely one of them. It is interesting that it is so precariously positioned in the transition of the show, and that maybe that makes it better just by comparison, or maybe not. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it is a... it's a banger 3-parter. Like, I'm excited to get into it. The only other thing I would guess I have up top is that we have Alexandra Kensley joining the cast in this episode, is the voice of Margaret Faye. This is her introduction as a character. And she's a voice actor, but not of particular note. Has a bunch of IMDb credits for stuff that I haven't heard of or don't care about. But she's also in Odyssey, takes over kind of from this point forward until she leaves, but as the voice of Mabel. With weird AI, which is an interesting Freudian slip of sorts.
What do you mean?
That Wit's female AI is
Margaret.
voiced by the same actress as Margaret Faye.
Yeah. I was trying to make a Margaret Mabel connection, like through the words, but nah. Marbles. Okay.
Alexandra Marbles Kensley, as she's known.
Let us talk about listening to old people flirt.
Even prior to the intro?
No, okay, maybe not prior to the intro. We'll get there. Because just reading her name brings up emotions.
Let's roll the promo, and then we can begin to unpack some of these emotions.
Wedding bells are ringing on Adventures in Odyssey. Jason Whittaker returns from a long vacation to find that a little-known woman named Margaret has developed a friendly relationship with Whit. But other matrimonious possibilities exist too. Whose wedding bells are these anyway? See if you can figure it out on the next Adventures in Odyssey.
Wii Sports music.
That was incredible, though. I mean, well, I love the Wii Sports soundtrack. So.
Oh, it's great music.
That was really off pitch, but Lord, love me. I spent, I want to say 15 to 20 minutes talking with a patient yesterday about the quality of the Wii Mario Kart soundtrack.
I don't have as much attachment to that one as I did not own Mario Kart. I think I'm the only person ever to own a Wii and not own Mario Kart.
So I didn't own it, but I did profusely rent it from Blockbuster. So
did you rent it enough times to have purchased it?
When you ask me like that, I think it's closer than I'm willing to admit. Because it was probably like what, a $40 or $50 game, and it was probably like $8 to $10 every rental.
Probably. So you hit 5 times. And
yeah. I definitely rented it at least 3 times, so it's close enough to maybe just to full send it. But now
you guys remember when you could rent video games at Blockbuster?
Oh, I miss that.
Do you remember
so
Blockbuster? I don't know what our demographic is.
I think our demographic's old enough to miss Blockbuster. Blockbuster's video game rental, I really appreciate that model. As somebody that, is very curious about most video games and will really only commit to a very select few, it's nice to have like a lower bar to entry and
but isn't that just Xbox Game Pass, Andrew?
Yeah, but like there's games that aren't on Game Pass that I don't want, and also like why would I pay for Game Pass when I just want one game off Game Pass? Like okay, I would rather buy it, but then like is it worth it for me if I'm gonna play that much of it?
So jumping into the episode itself, the teaser for this episode is great. A+. It gives me everything that I want in that little sting setup. And then, we've got Connie picking Jason up at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason is getting back from all of Europe and also China.
Yeah.
Because as we kind of set up...
We just listed names of places.
It's true. What is this, a Daniel Palladino episode? But kind of all off this idea of that we ended with when we covered the previous episodes where Jason was talking about the fact that like he does want to travel again. Mm-hmm. And so like they have him do the travel. And this episode is so well crafted because because this is a big break for Odyssey to take.
Yeah.
And rather than just picking up where we left off, they give us Jason as our surrogate character, who then gets to fill in. Like, Connie then fills him in on everything that's been going on. And so rather than just, like, time moving forward, we get to see, like, time really compressed in a way that Odyssey can't normally do. Yeah. Like, we get a whole summer of Whit and Margaret in this episode.
And just, like, a handful of flashbacks.
Correct.
Which would normally be spread across, like, 3 albums.
Right. Like, they don't have this built-in way to condense time. And to do, like, they're not a show that does a time skip ever.
No, not really.
In the way that, like, modern prestige TV so often does.
Yeah.
And so it's really well crafted, and I'm just like, props to McCusker and the whole writing team for pulling this off. Oh, I guess we didn't mention, written and directed by Paul McCusker.
No wonder I like it so much.
But not on staff.
Yeah. Connie had to pick up Jason from the airport because Whit had a lunch appointment, and obviously Jason's curious as to why his father wasn't there to pick him up after him being across the country. And Connie...
And they had talked, they mentioned that, like, he and Whit had talked, like, a day or two before, but that he apparently didn't get much info.
Yeah. No, Whit is unsurprisingly very cagey about his romantic life, or lack thereof.
Well, and Connie is just loving being the one in the know. Katie Lee performs this so well, and the Katie Lee Townsend Coleman chemistry really works. Not in like a oh man, I'm really shipping Connie and Jason, but just like they sound like they have such a fun repertoire and are like lovely on the mic here together. And this idea of like Connie actually is like in the know and Jason's not, and she's doing the thing, like one of my favorite things to do when I'm like filling someone in on a story is to like, rather than just like blurt it out, is to really like draw it out, play it out, not like let on to what the end is. Like that's so much of my storytelling strategy. Yeah. And something I get a lot of joy at. Right. That it's just really fun to have Connie doing it here.
Oh no, she does it so well, especially with Jason. Like what you said, the chemistry between them is so perfect, and it makes, like, honestly, I think that's what makes this scene and this episode work, is because they're so believable and they get along so well. It feels like you're sitting in the car with somebody that just got back from a trip and somebody's filling them in on all the stuff they missed.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I mean, I've been there where family members or whatever, people go on trips and you got to fill them in. So
even better, you get to get transported into those scenes literally.
Yeah, no, it's actually really fantastic how they had it set up.
Yeah, and so she sets up that all the stuff with, like, that there's stuff going on with Jack and Joanne, with Eugene and Katrina, and with Whit and Margaret Faye. And she says all of that, and then mentions that there is a wedding the day after next.
Yeah.
And so Jason's like, well, who's wet? And she's like, no.
No.
Like, you don't get that.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Oh, it's so fun.
It's an obvious moment of the writers have a way that they want to tell this story. But they're also like putting a character in it to do it, and it just like, it really works.
No, it fits perfectly with Connie's character of like now I finally have all the secrets over Jason, Mr. International Super Spy.
Right.
You know, and obviously like this is Connie's stuff. Like, it's all about the interpersonal relationships, especially in this era. It's the romance and the boy meets girl, boy likes girl stuff. Yeah, it flows really well, and their chemistry is fantastic. Lord, if anybody can save Odyssey, it's gonna be Townsend Coleman and Katie Lee, because they're the only two people that are left.
Yeah. And so she's then like, it's been a crazy summer, and we cut to commercial on the Twilight Zone music.
I did not clock that.
Like, it does a da-na-na-na-na-na-na, very, like, mixed in to the other music when we go to commercial and when we come back.
Huh. I missed that in the wow.
That's
so fun, though.
It's a wild decision.
Yeah.
And it's like, we know that they're Twilight Zone's fan. They literally made a show called The Twilight Zone within Odyssey, and they have Room of Consequence and like a lot of other stuff that functions that way. But it was really weird for them to go like just straight up with the music.
Yeah. It'd be like if they put like just the Batman theme in there, and you're like, isn't that like copywritten? Like,
yeah, and they just like they do the tiniest bit of Sting, but like enough that I immediately was like, they're doing the Twilight Zone music.
That's so funny, though. Oh, my goodness.
But yeah, so we come in on a scene at Wit's End, and everyone's hanging around and talking. And yeah, there's...
Connie's at Wit's End with Jack.
Yeah, Jack's like looking at buying a place. So he's like, there's like a flower store for sale, and that's what we come in on. And there's this idea of Jack's like, I want to like start a business. I've always wanted to own a shop. Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And so like they're having that conversation, and it's Connie and it's Jack and it's Bernard. And then Wit shows up. And they're having like a good convo. And at one point, you know, Connie's like, you know, how does this affect, you know, stuff with you and Joanne? Like,
yeah.
And Jack plays it very coy because he's Jack.
Yeah.
And there's a couple like great moments of just like Connie and Bernard comedy.
Oh yeah.
Which is not a like comedic duo that I think about. Like, Bernard paired with anyone is always good.
It's funny, yeah.
But like, I think about Bernard and Eugene, Bernard and Wooten.
Yeah.
Bernard
they're
and
like foils. But...
Right. But the Bernard and Connie thing is actually really fun.
No, Bernard and Connie gives me like, if I don't know, like if a straight man befriended a lesbian. You like very much just kind of like, we are completely different but somehow about the same thing.
Just like she has like a couple jokes back to back.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like there's chocolate handprints all over Wit's office
because a kid broke into it.
Right, it's Bobby. And then Jack, like out of nowhere, makes the comment about about wanting to buy the flower shop. And Bernard's like, how do you get from chocolate handprints to Maxwell's flower shop? And Connie just says, turn left on 8th Street.
Yeah, that's so funny. Like, that actually made me laugh. And it was, yeah. This is such a good Connie episode. Like, all of it is fantastic. She's riffing off people. They're actually like writing her well.
Yeah, it's so fun. And well, because then she gets another line like right after that where Jack's saying like he needs like a proper shop, something he can sink his teeth into, and Connie does like the dumbest joke, but in the way that I totally love, where like she knows it's dumb. Where she's like, Biffy's Burger Joint's up for sale. You could really sink your teeth into that.
Yeah, exactly. Which is hilarious and also like eye-rolling in the best way.
And then Bernard mumbles something about food poisoning. Like it really.
It works.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I appreciate Connie getting punchlines and just like the
Not
utilization of her in this episode is so good. Where it's like she still has the things that make her Connie, but no one's treating it as though that's a problem.
Yeah, well, she's not treated like a child, you know, like
right. She's an adult who like got to go pick up a guy in an airport. Like,
yeah, exactly. And she's funny, and she's, you know, making jokes with other people. Like, she's a funny person, you know? Like,
yep.
It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel gross or weird or, I don't know, minimized.
And
Wit talks to Jack, because Wit's kind of takes a dig at Jack leaving. I won't say he just says, like, because Jack's convinced that we don't need him around here anymore. And Jack wants to, like, kind of plant his own roots in the area, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And, like, this is Whit's shop, and he does make the point to kind of bring that up to Whit, which is interesting.
Yeah, Jack needs something that he can, like, call his own.
Yeah. Which is, I love that for the character as somebody that's come and gone. If you want to make somebody a staple of the town, like, you kind of have to give them their own classic environment like that. Whether it be, like, Bart Rathbun at Rathbun's Electric Palace or something like that.
Right. Yeah. There is no there are very few main characters in Odyssey who are not entrepreneurs. Like, you kind of like, George Barkley is the only Odyssey guy who, like, didn't own his own business,
and he's famously poor.
Right. Or, like, later when you get the Washingtons, like, we get the same kind of thing. But it's like, for the most part, like, Odyssey, like, if you're going to be a main character in Odyssey, you've got to be a student or own a business.
That's it.
Yep. Or, right, Tom's eventually mayor. But,
yeah. I mean, he's also owns a business, and that
Correct.
being his farm.
Yes. And futurely.
The Timothy Center.
Futurely? Sure. So yeah, then we have Bernard explains that there's an antique shop that's going to be sold, and that piques Jack's interest.
Oh yeah.
So he's going to have a conversation with the antique shop owner. But then we get Tom Riley showing up, aforementioned, and I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, what a stacked cast.
Yeah, no, like everybody's here.
Yeah.
No wonder I love this episode so much.
Right. There's no Eugene in this episode. But
rest in peace.
Everyone else is, but not yet. But everyone else is showing up, and with Tom walks a new character, Margaret Faye. With Tom not running for mayor, she's considering doing it. She's someone who throws her money around all around town and is thinking maybe she'll take the step into politics. And who better to talk to than Whit?
Certainly. Major political figure that refuses to be involved in politics,
right.
in air quotes.
Yeah. So Whit's like,
Is this do we know from the get-go that her husband's dead?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought I have it written in this note, but I wasn't sure if
Correct,
it's not revealed till later.
We know it pretty quick. It's not in this scene, but it's what we get in this scene is Whit saying, "Hi, Mrs." or "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Faye," and her saying, "Miss
Faye." Yeah,
and then him saying, "You can call me Whit." And she just, she totally steamrolls him, and just like, it's interesting that she is. It's not that dissimilar from the Jack and Joanne introduction stuff.
Yeah.
But she is played way less sympathetically.
Oh, no, certainly. She's played like kind of like the villain pretty much. As far as her attitude and everything. And just kind of her like the way that Tom talks about her later where she, that's Margaret, she gets what she wants, like, okay, being a go-getter is like a good thing, and as long as people aren't compromising their boundaries for you, then like you don't have anything to be afraid of. But there is certainly kind of this tone of like, well, what is this woman doing here with all this money? And like it is so contrary to everything that Odyssey presents women as, to have like a woman that walks in and basically turns everybody into children because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, and so she books time to get lunch with Whit the next day and
says a date.
It's a date, and walks out. And
my next note says, "It's me. I'm horny for Margaret." Oh, I don't remember feeling that, but I'm so glad that I wrote it down.
And so they're going back and forth about, what this means, what just happened. Wit's very like baffled.
Yeah.
Connie's like, she said it's a date. Women don't just throw those words around. I should know.
Yeah.
And which is weirdly one of those lines that has stuck with me from Odyssey. Like for some reason that one's burrowed deep into my subconscious. But then Bernard just gets a dig at Connie of just like, and have you been on any dates recently?
Yeah. And Connie's just blown out of the room. Like she's like,
No.
oh.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
you don't have to be cruel.
And then Wit has a kind of wild line that I love, but also was crazy hearing from his mouth, which is just like, he says, I have harmless meals with women all the time to discuss all sorts of things. And then, yeah.
Say into the microphone what the bad man did to you.
Yeah. And so we jump to a scene with them at lunch.
Wait a minute. I'm so sorry. Before we advance, I took a little diatribe. My next note after it's me, I horny for Margaret, I said, I bet she wants more than perspective, and then I went on to list potential names for Wit's penis.
Oh. Care to...
My top two are Curly Q Nozzle and the Tool of Consequence.
Both of these are good.
And then there's Nimrod, and there's,
Sure.
a handful of others, but I like Tool of Consequence the most.
I'm a big fan of first name's last name. So in this instances, it would be Johns Whitaker.
That's so good. Or Wit's End.
Dang it, guys, now I can't cut this.
Oh, boy.
I was gonna cut this, but that's too good a joke to cut.
Wow. I can't believe I thought of that off the cuff and not when I was sitting there thinking of what Wit could call his penis.
Oh, my word. It's Wit's.
Oh, boy. So then we cut to Wit and Margaret at dinner.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Oh, and we also established in that scene that she's gonna pick him up.
Yes.
And so yeah, it comes up very quickly in our conversation that she is a widow. That after her husband died, she was kind of pointless, without direction, and was then like, I gotta make something of myself. And that's when she started like investing in all of these businesses. She brings up that a lot of men are still like uncomfortable with a woman who makes money, and she's like, is that you, Wit? And he's like, no, I'm not. Like, and she's like, don't tell me you're one of these Christians who are against wealth. Then and he's like, no, I'm not against wealth. I just think it's got to be like used very specifically, in just like the most like. Just sum up Wit's character in a line.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Like, oh, yeah, I can be as rich as I want, and as long as nobody ever thinks that I don't use it for God's will.
Yeah. As long as I know what the will of God is, I can have all this money.
Yeah.
But I don't, it's...
I will say that, like, Wit calling her on it is kind of dope, though. As somebody that really feels like that red flag when I can tell that people are like maybe too invested in money, or like that's a big part of what makes them tick is how much money they have. I kind of appreciate him being like, well, it's not anything to do with your gender, and it has everything to do with the fact that like
your
money's
ethic.
what you're living for, basically.
Yeah, and say what you want about Wit and his immense wealth. He is always portrayed as someone who is doing good with that money. Like, money is never at the center.
No,
it is also never anything that gets in the way.
Yeah, he's never had money.
He has never had to think about money.
Yeah.
But he also is not like stumbling over it, at least as the show holds him out. Yeah, so I get it. I get, like, it's, and they have an interesting conversation where Margaret, brings up the fact that she's a Christian, which is honestly something I had forgotten. knowing kind of the way they play this character.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting choice to have her be a person of faith.
Yeah, it is, because it's very much like she doesn't go to our church, but she does go to church, so it's okay for Whit to be spending all this time and maybe potentially romantically inclined.
Right. It leaves her open as a possibility, and it's also it weirdly doesn't. I think this episode then goes on to maybe strawman her a little bit at different points, but it gives her a legitimacy in the context of this show.
Yeah.
That was kind of unexpected. Like, from her attitude and the way she's talking, you're like, this is a character who's being introduced to be like a villain and a foil to Wit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how this episode plays out.
No.
Which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, no. Well, because I wouldn't necessarily think, like, I would say that that's not the most realistic outcome. That might be the most TV show outcome, but, like...
Yeah.
I think that where this episode is strong is that it kind of shows the humanity in both ends of... Well, and in all parties involved in the...
Yeah.
In the romance.
The one thing I do have written in my notes that I will say, though, is that Wit, and it's later established that Margaret enjoys this aspect, but Wit gets very, like, indignant and, like, just, like...
No, he's very
like
passionate about it.
Yeah, but, like, an attitude of, like, superiority.
Yeah.
Like, definitely brushes up, where it did kind of feel like, oh, we have created a character for Wit to think he is better than.
Yeah.
And I really felt that in the first scene, and I think the rest of the episode treats her better than that.
Definitely.
And it'll be interesting to see how the following episodes carry that out.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because it was not something I was paying attention to as a child.
Yeah. Basically, at least I'm pretty sure the moment that you're talking about is they're talking about stewarding money, and Wit questions like whether, okay, is the best thing for you to do for God to be, with your money, to be mayor, or is it to, be a soup kitchen, run a soup kitchen for the poor, how Paul Hoeninger says, poor. And Margaret kind of brushes it off like, well, I wouldn't want to waste my talents at a soup kitchen. And Wit takes that personally and is like, well, what would it, how could this be a waste? And blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Margaret should not have responded that way. Like, that's very insensitive to be like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to waste my time helping the needy.
Yes,
wow.
But then, Wit, yes, which is...
But Wit then takes it way personally and kind of jumps all over it and really codes it to mean as, like, to the worst possible outcome.
And it's very much like this, like, it comes off as, oh, this is a person who has the same giftings and proclivities as Wit, but they do not understand God as well as Wit does.
Yeah.
And therefore Wit is better.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. Well, he's the morally upstanding person. We can have people of power, but the difference between the two is
correct. Right. Wit's power is good power.
Yes.
And Wit's wealth is good wealth. Mm-hmm. And the power and wealth Margaret want
and Wit's church
bad.
Is the good church.
Right. And the power and wealth that Wit want are good, and what she wants is bad. And that's not because she's a woman, but also
it's not because of
right,
she's a
but
woman.
Also we are only portraying this as a conflict between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
In which we are portraying the man as right.
Yeah.
And the woman is wrong.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think Margaret Faye went to see Barbie? I feel like she did.
Yeah, but I mean that feels pretty girl boss of her.
Yeah, right?
Margaret Faye, the original girl boss.
Amen.
So then the next morning, Connie's hanging out at Wit's End, and Tom and Bernard drop in, and they're waiting for Wit to roll in so that they can get the scoop from him.
Yeah.
Get it?
Oh, it's so good.
The scoop?
The scoop from Wit. at his ice cream shop, perhaps.
And yeah, Whit's just kind of like, oh, I don't think that she, like, I definitely don't think it was a date. The only thing I don't think we'll be seeing each other again, even if it was. Like, we disagreed about everything except for the salad dressing.
Yeah. We both liked Italian.
Yep.
That's Italian weird.
And then she walks in.
Yeah.
And talks about how much she loved debating Whit, how good a time they had, and she invites Whit to go to a museum in Connellsville or something.
Yeah, go to
art show or whatever. And she goes to say, like, I'll pick you up at, and Whit's like, no, I'll pick you up. Just give your address. And I'm like, what is this need to assert dominance, Whit? Like, that's a weird power move from you, John Avery.
No,
like,
it is
why
a weird
did we
power
need that
move.
in here?
Well, because they made such a big stick about her picking him up in the first place. Where it was like, oh, wow, she's a strong woman in charge. She picked him up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We've let women drive for as long as there have been cars. So, you know, most of the time there's been cars. No, yeah, what I will say, and not to, like, keep pulling you back or anything, but the
keep yanking me back.
Yeah, pretty much. No. The awkward moment of, like, Whit being like, why are all these people here, and they haven't told him that they just want the tea from Margaret.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just wanted a cup of coffee from Whit's End. Yeah, a cup of coffee from Whit's End. That's what I says to myself. I don't know. I just thought it was fun. And It's just Bernard and Tom being folksy and weird and funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it draws then the hard contrast to Margaret just bulldozing in, basically dragging Whit out onto a date.
Yeah. And then Connie, like, jumps in with her narration to say that, like, and they, like, went to stuff, they, like, continued to go to stuff all summer long together. They were, you know, doing stuff 2 or 3 times a week. And Jason's just like, wait. My dad is not getting married without, like, telling me. And Connie says, well, you almost got married to Tasha without your dad.
Which,
Jason's just like, but it's different. Isn't it? It's
best
great.
Connie episode
I
ever.
love it. Connie's so good.
No, you.
Yep. And she's like, you just have to wait and see. And, like, she's so, like, giddy.
Yeah.
And then we jump back in, and it's like an intervention meeting without Whit, where they're like, it's Tom and Bernard and Jack and Connie, and they're trying to figure out what Whit's doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, is he dating? Like, what's going on? They see each other so often. But none of us have really met her.
Yeah.
And Bernard has this great line where he was just like, if I was dating someone, I'd make sure my friends got to know her.
Yeah.
Which, like, same.
Yeah.
But also I know plenty of people who do not share that attitude.
Yeah. I happen to be related to at least one of them, but... But no, certainly it is so weird that it's like two sides of the coin, where it's like you either want to immediately absorb them into whatever you've got going on for yourself, or you need to keep them parceled out so it doesn't disrupt anything. And
I don't know. I think I tend to strike a bit of a balance.
That's fair. I mean,
Personally.
you're a very temperate person. I feel
Where
like
I'm
if
just
anybody
like,
could find a balance, it would be
where it's like, I don't know, you slowly, like, ease a person into your life and just keep opening the door wider and wider as far as what other people are there until everyone's gotten to interact with them, at least somewhat. Like, I know I have friends who, I don't have anybody who, like, I really don't know their partner, but I have friends who have attended weddings of other friends where they only knew one of the people in the wedding. Like, where they only knew the bride or only knew the groom. And I'm like, that is wild.
Yeah, how would you not then meet the spouse? Like, I mean, I guess, you know, if it's like we roomed together in college or something like that. Like, if there's a
Yeah, but then why are you getting a wedding invite?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, I think you should at very least not be. And if there's like a crazy distance thing, and it's a fairly short relationship, like there are circumstances, but like the one in particular I'm thinking of here, they are both like very close personally and physically, and did not meet
Interesting.
the other's like spouse until the wedding, which is
so funny.
wild to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess people are different.
Right, but I'm just like, number one, like, as soon as I know I like a person, number two is make sure that the people around me will co-sign that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I do not want to pursue this any further until I have involved the people I care about, because I care way more deeply about my friend relationships that I've been maintaining over decades than about any romantic partner.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I feel like that's a very reasonable and arguably correct way to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, and other people don't
grow
necessarily
and change and
yeah,
stuff,
and
but
people don't necessarily have the same like desire or like reliance on friendship in the way that I maybe do.
Yeah.
Like, I think for some people, having one other person who they share their whole life with is enough.
Yeah, no, 100%. And
I
could never be me.
Yeah, not a chance.
That person would hate me.
Yeah.
If I just stopped hanging out with everybody else but just the one person.
I have to fight myself when I'm not in a relationship to be too clingy.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Like,
Yeah.
just be like, all right, we're joined at the hip. Like, you got to do everything with me because I desperately need to be around people and to constantly voice my thoughts.
Have you ever considered therapy, Dylan?
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, no, but that's like, in all honesty, that is so real though, as far as like, yeah, you and I are very similar in I want my community, like I think so highly of the people around me that I want them to be involved in it, and I want their cosign, or at the very least I just want their perspective, because Lord knows I can't think about everything all at once.
Sure. Yeah, and it requires vulnerability and also like
humility and stuff,
right?
Yeah,
and to be like, okay, I really like this person and these people in my life don't. How do I evaluate that?
Yeah. What does this mean? How do I approach this moving forward then? If there is conflict there, what does that even look like?
Yeah.
This is also where we find out that Bernard's last date was on November 22nd of 1963. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. 100%. It is wild. And he was talking about that he was dating Thelma Klein.
Thelma.
And
what a name.
Yeah, and Kennedy got shot and she blamed him for it personally.
Yep, and that ended their relationship.
So funny.
No, it's absolutely hilarious. I love that.
Yeah.
Bernard has one random dating story tied to a historical event.
It's so funny. And then Tom's like, last time I was dating, it was called courting.
Yeah. Don't look at me. Last time I was dating.
Jack also is like, because Jack has the thing bouncing off the make sure your friends get to know, where he's like, oh, I always hid people I was dating from my friends because they would steal the person I was dating.
Yeah.
And then Connie goes like, really? And he just mumbles, how do you think Whit met Jenny?
Yeah. Which, like, dang.
Banger line. It's
banger.
So good. I love that being sprinkled in. And like, yeah, there are episodes that get into that. But like,
that's so fun, though.
Just a perfect
I wonder if
joke.
they had the triangle planned out at this point.
I doubt it. I think someone thought that was a good joke.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
And like, because it is.
Yeah. No, it is
a fantastic joke.
It's also real.
Yeah. Right. And then they established it in canon later. But yeah, it's so funny. And then so they're like leaning in to Jack, and they're like, "Well, Jack, you're the one who's been dating most recently."
Mm-hmm.
And Jack kind of just like is pretty coy in his normal way and just says like, basically like, yeah, two people can be dating, or also two people of the opposite sex can just like enjoy spending time around each other, and that can be it. And I'm like, wow, thank you, Jack and Odyssey, for affirming like
platonic opposite sex relationships,
because that is a thing that is not well enforced in society, especially not conservative Christian society, especially not in the 90s.
Yeah, what? Where is Jack coming with this hippy dippy nonsense? But also, like, I love it. Preach.
Yes.
That's, yeah. No, I do really appreciate, and just kind of the nuance that it takes. Because, you know, I feel like when you talk about dating, especially, you know, dating as an adult, you know, there's a bit more of a fixation on like either the professional or the physical side, where it's like, you know, either this person's like super far along in their career and is like really going places, or it's like, oh, this person's super hot or whatever. There's all kinds of things going on. This kind of takes an approach of like, I feel like is fairly holistic, just looking at like, yeah, really, in actuality, most relationships start as friendships, and then there's an awkward phase of like, well, okay, so what is this? And I feel like this episode kind of approaches that with a lot of grace and
and an acknowledgement
humility,
that they can land either way, and that doesn't have to be the end.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that it can be good both ways, especially like the fact that Whit doesn't think twice about it, that he's not like, oh, I actually have a dead wife, I'm never gonna go out with another woman on a date, like, or it's not even a date, like, go out to eat with another woman, you know.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of just platonic opposite sex relationships that are like endorsed and viewed as healthy.
Yeah. I like that it gets the lip service here, even if the episode is going to stray away from it.
Yeah.
Because, like, my hunch is by the end of this 3-parter that we're not going to have any male-female platonic relationships out of the 3 that have been set up.
I think they all are going to move. They will all progress further in whichever direction.
Yeah. But I like that it's there and it's established, and obviously, like, it just, like, I like that lip service.
Well, and the reality of the fact is you have to accept that as a possibility for anything else to happen.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. In order for the premise of the show to work, that has to be an option. In order for it to be a will they or won't they with Whit, there has to be an option where they are just doing this all as friends. Mm-hmm. And so, like, the show kind of, like, in its premise necessitates that conversation, but I'm like very happy that it's there and that it's well represented, and that we're not making it you either don't interact one-on-one or you marry each other, which can be very much the approach to male-female friendship.
Yeah. Which, and as we're unpacking all of this, Jason interjects with Connie and basically is like, yeah, I feel so bad for my dad. Like, you got to think about how long it's been since he's dated. Like, he must be completely lost. And boy, howdy, yeah. I mean, you think that people don't change and stuff like that, but I don't know. I feel like it's really hard to feel confident in that kind of romantic environment in general. And 2, just, you know, having the experiences that Whit has and the lack of relationships, like, I definitely sympathize with Jason's concern.
Yeah. And so Whit walks in and gets bombarded by everyone kind of asking about his relationship with Margaret, and he just very much brushes them off.
Yeah.
And then Tom goes up and has like a nice one-on-one heart-to-heart with Whit, where he asks again, and Whit's like, you know, kind of the reason I brushed him off is because I don't know. He's like, we like a lot of the same things. When she invites me, like, I always want to go, but we don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, and I don't know where this is going. And Tom's kind of like, you know, don't you think that's kind of unusual for 2 single people? And he says, maybe it is, but all things considered, I don't know what the next step should be.
Well, and that's...
Which yeah, it does set up like, well, there's got to be a next step, which I think there doesn't. Like,
Yeah.
I think the episode kind of implies that, like, because Wit isn't pursuing things in any direction, or like that somehow like this being stagnant is like on Wit, or like his lack of clarity is the only reason that they've been able to maintain as not a couple, is because Wit's just confused.
Yeah, or that Wit hasn't picking up on the hints or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, which, I mean, we do get that addressed in the next scene with Margaret, basically coming clean. But
Yeah.
I do think that, it's interesting to see Wit not knowing something, especially like this. And also, I feel like it's a pretty raw and authentic way for how things go down, where you don't know until you know. And oftentimes you feel anxiety or fear about what you feel like you should know and what you feel like you should have resolved, especially when it comes to how that's going to affect your relationship with somebody else. Like, obviously Wit does not want to hurt anybody.
No.
He doesn't want to lead Margaret on or anything like that. So he's going to have those kinds of internal questions of like, okay, what should I do next so that this is, mutually beneficial and minimally harmful?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so they go to, like a downtown historic Connellsville, like market area. And it starts raining and they run into a shop, and Margaret's just like, says, she's really enjoyed Wit's company and just the way he shoots straight and like the conviction with which he believes things. And he's like, well, it's just, whatever, I just go off the Bible. And she's like, I don't have a lot of people in my life who do that. Even like the people I go to church with tend to view the Bible as a suggestion. And then she gets down on a knee, I guess.
Yeah.
And asks John Avery Whittaker if he'll marry her. And we go out of the episode.
Will you marry me? End of episode. Good golly, Miss Molly. I love this episode. I love this 3-parter. I love all of it.
Yep. It's really freaking good. It's really fun. And I'm excited to talk about the next 2 parts. I don't know.
Certainly.
I don't know what else to say here. I feel like we've really run the gamut.
No, certainly. I don't really have any additional notes or anything other than I'm so glad that this is an episode that I held in such high regard for so long that it held up well.
Yeah.
Like in the way that like Aloha Oi was like still kind of funny, but much worse than it was for me initially.
Sure.
This is definitely held up really well. And I think it was an accurate application of like what I like about Odyssey. Like I feel like this is a very good example, and like when I think about what I love about Odyssey, I think about a lot of the stuff presented in this episode and kind of how characters interact.
Yeah, it's so funny and telling that it's like they have been off for 9 months, and rather than coming back and like introducing a new family right off the bat, or introducing new kids, all of which will happen in this on like this same album.
Yeah.
Like on this album, Jared gets introduced and the Mulligans get introduced and whatever. Like that is going to happen here. But number one of their priorities is like, we're going to make a story about like 3 adult relationships.
Yeah. Like
that's what
3
we're gonna
adult
come back on.
situationships.
Sure, yeah.
Like not even like following
2 of
3
which
marriages.
are elderly.
Yeah. Pop off, queen.
Like, yeah, it's so fun. I love the like freedom that the writers have to be able to do something like this, and just how much they care about it and how well they execute it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's delightful.
It really is.
Yeah. Andrew. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Oh. Have I plugged Women Talking yet, the book?
I don't believe so. Go for it.
Well, I just want to make sure I pronounce it correctly.
It's the opposite of a podcast.
Yes, it's imagine consuming the words with your eyes as opposed to ears. It's women talking. Obviously, the movie came out last year, was nominated for a bunch of awards, but the book itself is really fantastic. It's by Miriam Toews. It's spelled Toews.
There will be a link.
And it's like roughly 200 pages. It's a really easy read. It's not like it's intense, but like the way that it's written is very consumable and compelling. So yeah, if I'm giving you a book recommendation, it's gonna hold your attention because those are the only books that I end up reading. So yeah, definitely would highly recommend it. Watch the movie. I haven't seen it, but watch it, I guess, and read the book. Dylan, do you have anything to recommend?
Yeah, I have a weird plug of sorts, but I'm gonna recommend the Netflix series Easy. It is a 3-season show that aired like 2016 to 2019.
Yeah, what?
It's all the episodes are written and directed by Joe Swanberg, who's a big mumblecore guy who I really like. And they're all, it's essentially an anthology show set in Chicago about relationships.
Yeah.
And so we constantly jump in and out of all these different people's lives, and a lot of them like cross paths, or, we follow the same story across multiple episodes, but they're never like back-to-back episodes like we get. But yeah, it's a little hit or miss, and it can get pretty,
steamy?
Yeah, like a little bit more than even I, who have a pretty high tolerance, am sometimes a little bit like, this feels like there's better, like this, like I don't know why the conceit of this episode is like every time we gotta have a sex scene. I'm like, sure, okay. But it's like interesting stories. It's a ton of like cool indie actors who I love popping up, and yeah, there are just some like really fun.
Yeah, it looks great.
Fun conversations, and yeah, just interesting dynamics explored throughout it. I think it's certainly not for everyone, and not even entirely for me. But I'm like happy it's out there doing its thing.
No, yeah, certainly. Well, and I feel like oftentimes with shows that you're not absolutely in love with, you're able to see a bit more holistically, what that show's distinct strengths are, just because you're constantly viewing it in light of its shortcomings as well.
And then with all that being said, we're going to be back next week for episode 373. You guessed it. It's For Whom the Wedding Bells Toll, Part 2.
Bye, guys!
Bye.